really get into the meat of today's video, it's so abundantly important to me that you understand how much I hate being on the internet. My screen time of like about probably 80 hours a week would tell you differently, but I hate being on the internet because it makes my brain melt. Something about a screen, something about those LEDs, baby, they make people forget how to be a human. And today we'll be discussing that in the context of Sarah Kim, aka Homegirl. She's recently been embroiled in a bit of controversy as it relates to her and her marriage and blah, 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 blah. But first we have to understand, who is this mysterious Homegirl figure, right? Aka Homegirl is a Korean American influencer who's mostly known for her lifestyle content. And she got really popular for her videos where she would have food stuff with her mom, like her mom making kimchi or something. Like, she just really fit into a niche that people wanted to see of just a small town girl. Like, she was just super relatable and people loved her vibe. I love seeing her connection that she has with her family. Her whole family just seems like chillers who love each other, and the internet really loves when that happens. She's kind of just grown out of that and included more parts of her life and lifestyle aside from, you know, just being a girl in her 20s, to being somebody's daughter, to being somebody's wife, to being an employee. People get to see all these different facets of her life. All of that probably sounds really chill, so it kind of leads you to wonder, what's the problem? Like, what is the issue and why is she in so much controversy? Well, apparently, if you ask TikTok, her husband sucks. He is a deadbeat. He already left their unborn child. He's just basically the worst guy ever, according to TikTok. The reason why TikTok landed on that conclusion is because Sarah recently came out with a podcast featuring her husband Andrew as the guest star. And while TikTok and other people on other platforms have known that Andrew and Sarah have been together for a while and they've been married for years, a lot of people have questions about them as a couple. How did they come to be? What are their dynamics like? They want to know the real, the raw, the depth of everything. So in order to address those more difficult and layered questions, they had a podcast where it kind of led to them sharing the interesting, in my opinion, backstory of how they got together. I have my opinions on it, that's for sure. It started when Sarah liked Andrew and they would frequent the same coffee shop, and she low-key like rizzed him up, and the rizz was unstoppable, even though Sarah's family was against their union, them dating and stuff, because of the age gap that the two have. I believe it's like an 8 or 7.5 or something, like large age gap between the two of them. So her daddy was like, oh heck nah, and her brother was like, oh heck nah, because not only was Sarah feeling him after seeing him in the coffee shop, they been knew each other. So not only is Andrew older than Sarah's older brother, right? They grew up or something like that in the same area. So it was just red flag central to the family, at least from the narrative that they told in the podcast. Sarah graduated from high school, they were able to start dating, and Sarah made that decision for herself where she's like, look, I understand that you guys are against it, speaking to her family, but I need to be able to make my own decisions. We've waited long enough. I want to be with him. We're going to be together. Thank God they ended up working out, so like, great for them. Let me be clear, I want them to be happy in their marriage. I don't want anybody to be in a bad marriage. It was just a bit of a rocky start to their relationship. So upon learning that information, I think that's when the tide sort of began to turn and people started to feel some sort of apprehension towards this couple that people once thought were like hashtag goals. And to make matters worse, the couple then went on in another podcast episode to talk about the hardships they had been enduring during their marriage, which is normal. Like, I think that there is this expectation like, oh, if there's any struggle in your relationship, you're not meant to be it. Like, dump him. That is the energy that people give a lot, and nobody's willing to work towards anything. So as they began speaking about some of the issues that they have faced in their marriage, they started talking about being jobless, and people were like, jobless, you know, clutching their pearls a little bit, because that's scary, mamas. And at first that started off with Sarah being hashtag unemployed. I think it was a choice to no longer work because the place where she was working didn't align with her, or it was like exploitative. Yes, it was exploitative. And then it became Andrew not working, and he wasn't working for what I believe was like 2 years, which is a long odd time to not be working. But in both of those bouts where there wasn't income coming in from one of the spouses, the other spouse hashtag held it down. But during the podcast, they focused pretty much a lot on how Sarah was holding it down and some of Andrew's other shortcomings. Like, for example, when they were going to meet with a financial advisor to do some financial planning, and Andrew was like, LOL, what that gotta do with me? That is a very simplified paraphrasing of what he said, but that kind of just turned people off, because to the audience members, it kind of felt like he didn't want to take responsibility to do better or improve. People thought he's just a gamer who sits on his butt, doesn't even clean, doesn't even do this or do that. Clips of the podcast have been circulating to where people are getting the entire narrative based on a few clips. They're coming to conclusions that are not true, that are then causing them to immediately go, he never wants to work a job, he wants to leech off of her, this, that, and a third, divorce him. And they're saying this in her comment. Different issues that people have, but out of them, I think that there are 3 main issues. Firstly being the age gap, then the religious factor that goes into all of this, and the misleading portrayals that are leading to a lot of the confusion that viewers are experiencing. So when it comes to the age gap is still hashtag weird to me, and like I wish them the best. Like I want them to be okay as a couple, of course. But I think if I take away, if you just told me a scenario with person A of age X and person B of age Y, and you told me how they got together, you didn't put any other identifying information, I would still be like, that's weird. Other thing is that makes it not too crazy, there's rules, but there's always exceptions to the rules. So my hope is that like it's just a remarkable scenario and it is free of any exploitation. That is my hope. That maybe that is my hope and my cope. Maybe that's just what I'm choosing to believe. The other aspect that is really informing this whole situation from a lot of people's perspectives is the religious aspect. But both Sarah and Andrew are Christian, and while they don't necessarily run Christian pages where they're like constantly like sharing the gospel or something like that, they lead faith-driven lives. They want to, as quickly as possible, achieve the goal of getting married because it is so valued within their religion that they end up rushing it. That is a worry that some people have in regards to Andrew and Sarah's marriage. And on top of that, when Sarah kind of speaks about the financial aspect of the relationship and during the time period where Andrew was out of work, some people kind of interpret that as, oh, she is struggling and she seems unhappy, but maybe she's okay with that level of unhappiness and struggling because of her upbringing and her religious background that tells her that the struggle is worth it. It is a difficult balance because if that is the case, if she is feeling that way, at least she has something helping her get through the more difficult days that is bigger than herself. At the same time, despite there being struggles that we have to face through the reality of being a person living on earth, there are some struggles that are avoidable. For example, your man playing video games to 1 o'clock in the morning is not a struggle you should have to endure. He could just choose not to play the video games that long. Like, that is also an option. So I think figuring out the differences between what are worthy trials to endure and what is just like people messing around, like messing you over, is something that a lot of people have seen their religious loved ones struggle with. So it leads to worry in the viewer's mind, like carrying through normal challenges, or is she burdening herself with more in the pursuit of being in a godly relationship. But on top of that, the main issue that I personally have is that there are so many misleading portrayals of what they stated and misleading portrayals of the relationship. I think, honestly, the truth is kind of weird enough to the point where you don't have to make up stuff. For that, he was roasting his wife during his sermon. And here's the thing, I don't want anybody to joke about me like that to a group of people. I want to be comfortable with that in my relationships that I have with people who care about me and I care about them. That want to be okay for me. But if he gets up on stage and says those things, I think it is a bad faith interpretation to take that and be like, oh, he's being so rude, he's being so mean, he hates her. What a disrespectful and crazy thing to say. It is a joke. Even if you don't think it was that funny or delivered that well, it's pretty obvious that this is the type of joke that people make. At the same time, I feel like maybe if you're not as familiar with the different ways that some Christian pastors preach, then it may be a bit confusing. But this style, this comedic sort of style, where you kind of treat your wife like the old ball and chain, and you treat your children like they are creatures spawned just to bring you pain, that is a common joke. Like, people do that all the time, and they don't always genuinely hate the people that they're speaking about. Like, it's just a thing that happens. I don't know what to tell you. It's attention-seeking behavior, and obviously I do attention-seeking behavior too, but attention seek without lying. That's all I ask. My biggest takeaway from this whole situation is that people don't know how to be people on the internet without being complete poopy heads. Excuse my language. I think so many viewers have seen so many situations where husbands are absolute dog water at their job of being a husband, which is not, I won't say it's easy, but it's not as hard as they make it out to be. You know what I'm saying? That leads to people projecting their own traumas onto their situation and making up things that don't actually exist, so they feel even more justified and righteous in their anger, which leads to them being rude to the person who they're perceiving as a potential victim. Because the husband sucks and you think that she is in a bad marriage that she doesn't deserve, you're going to berate her in her comments? How is that going to help anybody? I don't think it will. I do not know homegirl. You probably do not know homegirl. The people who can give you advice are neutral third parties and people who are actually in your life. If you're just a fan, if you're just a viewer, I'm sorry, but they're probably not going to take advice from you. It's especially crappy to do that to a woman who's literally pregnant. She already has enough going on. She's trying to grow a human. If you ain't got nothing nice to say, right? Finish it. Don't say nothing at all. Yes. Just follow that principle, and I think everybody would be a lot better off. I genuinely, if we go through my TikTok block list right now, this video will be 30 minutes long just for me scrolling through that block list, mama. Just block and move on. Let's all try to be better to one another, and if we can't be better or do something productive, just leave it alone, mamas. Leave it alone. That's it of me being in Korean people business. I love doing that. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. What do you think about this whole situation? I think that it ties into a really bigger conversation, but do you think it's more isolated just to this girl and her husband? I don't know. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. And I will definitely see you next time because you are coming back. Bye.